The scent of oil and metal had become a second home to Rasa Ahmed for over 30 years. He had worked in a cramped garage just outside the edge of Multan, where desert heat often turned wrenches to fire rods. But no matter the temperature, Rasa never stopped. He had been a soldier once, a tank mechanic for the army, the best in his unit. After retirement, while others chose peace, Rasa chose purpose. He built a private workshop that specialized in old military tank restorations. It wasn't flashy, but it was respected. What most didn't know was that Rasa had a teenage daughter named Anaya, just 17, with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. Ever since she was 5, Anaya had watched her father work, mesmerized by the clinks and clangs of tools, the rhythm of his process. While other kids played with dolls and screens, Anaya spent her time under vehicles, handing her father wrenches and asking how combustion engines worked. Rasa, however, kept her in the background. It wasn't because he doubted her, but because he feared for her. The mechanical world was rough and unforgiving, dominated by men who didn't take kindly to being corrected by a girl. He would often tell her, "Beta, learn it all you want, but don't let the world bruise you for being smarter than it expects you to be." Anaya listened, but she also quietly studied. She memorized her father's repair books, disassembled small engines by herself, and even designed her own digital notes on tank mechanisms. She loved machines the way musicians loved melody. And yet, she remained unseen. Everything changed the day they were invited to the National Military Tank Build and Restore Finals in Lahore. It was the first time civilian mechanics were allowed to compete against military engineers and institutional teams. The prize? Prestige, sponsorships, and a government contract worth millions. Rasa's garage was chosen because of his years of service and reputation. He would restore a decommissioned army tank in 4 weeks, with one final test at the National Grounds, a performance evaluation, where the tank would have to complete a live challenge across rugged terrain, simulated combat response, and precision control. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. Rasa accepted, and Anaya was thrilled. Though he didn't include her officially in the team, he allowed her to assist quietly. In the background, she worked side by side with him, watching every bolt he tightened, every part he replaced. But with 2 days left before the finals, disaster struck. Rasa collapsed while checking the hydraulic system. His face turned pale and his hands trembled. Anaya screamed. The crew rushed to his side and called an ambulance. At the hospital, the doctor shook his head gravely. It was a heart condition worsened by years of overwork and stress. He needed rest, absolute rest. Rasa, however, only cared about one thing. The tank, it's not ready, he whispered. We'll lose our chance. Anaya held his hand tightly, her voice steady but her heart breaking. Abu, I'll finish it. No, he said, trying to sit up. It's too risky. They won't take you seriously. They don't have to, she replied. The tank just has to work. The next morning, while her father lay in the hospital bed, Anaya returned to the workshop. The rest of the crew had panicked and backed out. They didn't trust a teenager to fix the hydraulic drive, recalibrate the pressure valves, and optimize the engine cooling system. They said it couldn't be done in 48 hours. Anaya stood alone, but alone didn't mean helpless. She put on her father's coveralls, tied her hair, opened his old military logbooks, and got to work. The tank at T-59, with over 25 faults, looked like a dying beast, but Anaya didn't flinch. She opened the gear unit and diagnosed the slippage. She cleaned out the intake chambers, replaced the seals, and reinforced the firing control board. With rewired components she had soldered herself at home just in case. Every move she made was backed by memory. Years of watching. Years of learning. By the time dawn broke on the day of the finals, Anaya stood before the tank, grease on her face, hands aching, but the engine purring like a lion. She arrived at the Lahore military grounds with the tank loaded on a trailer. When she stepped down, the officials looked confused. Where's Rasa Ahmed? One of them asked. He's unwell, she replied calmly. I'm presenting the tank. Laughter followed, murmurs, some were outright dismissive. Is this a joke? But the rules didn't bar her. As long as the tank passed the challenge, it didn't matter who fixed it. Other teams set up Teams with engineers, analysts, budget, and uniformed confidence. And then there was Anaya, one girl, one machine. One chance, the finals began. One by one, the tanks were tested. The judges looked for speed, precision, control, and stability. Some machines roared beautifully. Others stumbled under pressure. The audience was large military officers, civilians, journalists. Everyone was watching. When it was Anaya's turn, the announcer's voice cracked slightly. And now, entry. Number 7 restored by Anaya Ahmed. As the tank moved into the obstacle course, silence took over. Anaya sat inside, controlling the system she had modified. The ignition clicked. The engine roared to life. The first maneuver, a steep climb, was smooth. The audience leaned forward. The next, the turning test over rocky terrain, was flawless. Then came the hydraulic pivot, the most difficult section. Only one other tank had passed it that day. Anaya pushed forward. The tank tilted, adjusted, groaned, and held steady. Perfect balance. Then came the final test, target lock and response. Anaya had reprogrammed the targeting system using recycled chips. She aligned the scope, fired, hit. The crowd gasped, and then applause. The judges were stunned. Engineers came forward. Officials checked the tank in disbelief. Everything passed. She had done it. Reporters ran to her. People shouted her name. One of the engineers who had mocked her earlier whispered to his colleague, "She's better than all of us." Later that evening, her father was wheeled in by hospital staff against orders. When he saw the crowd cheering and his daughter standing beside the winning tank, he cried like a child. Anaya ran into his arms. "We did it, Abu." "No," he said, holding her tightly. "You did." The Defense Ministry later confirmed that Anaya would be awarded a National Engineering Fellowship. Sponsorships rolled in. But for her, none of that mattered. What mattered was this: when no one believed in her, she believed in the machine and in herself. She fixed more than a tank. She fixed her father's dream. And she proved to the world that brilliance has no age, no gender, and no boundaries. Moral call on: never underestimate the heart of someone who's been quietly learning, quietly watching, and quietly growing. The world may not expect greatness from those who stand in the shadows, but sometimes those are the people who shine the brightest when it matters most.